This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day. Carefully crafted for you by humans, so meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fully Managed Podcast, the podcast where we discuss marketing and business tips to help assist you on your business journey. I'm your host, Shannon, Penji's Partnership Coordinator, and I'm joined here today with a very special guest, John Tsourakis from Oyova. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for that intro, and thank you for having me, Shannon.
Of course, I appreciate it. Could you start by telling us a little bit about yourself? Introduce yourself in the way that you would and not the way I would. Maybe you'd call yourself a very special guest too. And tell us a little bit about yourself and anything that you think is relevant about your business journey and how you've gotten to this point in your professional career.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ups and downs and turns and roller coaster rides. So essentially, yeah, I'm the president and partner in Oyova, an agency that I co-own with my business partner. I've been doing this since 2008, had other businesses in there, everything from healthcare companies to mastermind groups to job boards and other little ideas that really didn't pan out, wasted a lot of time and money, but learned a lot of things from. So ultimately what I do today is help guide the company and look for new opportunities, work on our marketing, our sales, and just really look for the engagements that are going to work best for our team.
That's fantastic. What do you think was the most important thing that you learned on this journey of success and failure, which everyone goes through? I don't worry about the failure part.
I don't know about the most important. I don't know if I can hit that. I mean, usually, there's tons. I mean, business is all people, right? And it's people that are working for you. It's people that you're going to do something in exchange for money. Whenever you lose sight of that, you think technology is going to solve that problem. There's always going to be a human impact. So the better that you connect with people and really work on that, it's a skill, right? Whether you're introverted, extroverted, there's going to be upsides and downsides to that. The more that you work on that skill to really be able to connect with people, the better you'll be at business or anything for that matter, because it's all people at the end of the day.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that a people-centered focus in any business is always going to be better than one that isn't. Obviously, everyone would probably try to claim that they are doing that because, of course, if you're focusing on, pleasing your client, then you're focusing on, caring for them. But I think that a lot of people lose sight of that sometimes in the process.
But is it genuine? That's where I always challenge back on that. It's just everybody, especially like, the Fortune 100, 500, and 1,000. It's like, oh, yeah, we put our people first. And then you look at their Glassdoor reviews and it's like, guys, I mean, you might as well be running a sweatshop with people being, having guns to their heads. Mm-hmm. So I think it's very difficult to really do it. Now, I'm not saying we're doing it in the best way, but I know we're trying. And I think that's the most important thing if you're actually giving an authentic try.
How do you kind of invest yourself in a business to make sure that you're authentically caring about them? Because I think that a lot of people will have a client that maybe they're not interested in their work or their industry, and it's a bit difficult to kind of bridge that gap and have a connection with them in which you care about the success of their business because you aren't well versed in the industry itself.
So are you speaking from like a client perspective, or are you thinking about like a business that I'm actually going to pour some of my money and time into to help it grow?
I guess maybe both. If you have an opinion on both, I'd like to hear both.
Yeah, I do. And and one of the unfortunate things about business is you're not always going to work with all the people you want to work with. And anybody that actually has that figured out, I'd love to hear from them, right? Because it's not that we'll work with bad people or nefarious people, right? We turn down clients. But sometimes there are people that we come to work with and we don't necessarily see eye to eye on everything that they do, but we can still have an amicable relationship and do a really good job for them, right? but if they treat our team members bad in any way, that's a no-go. No, we're not going to tolerate that. And we've fired clients for that. As far as a company that I would invest in, I think it really comes down to the leadership and what is that person like? Is that somebody that I would, that I want to believe in, that can motivate, that can inspire, or somebody that could follow, somebody that I could have a connection with? That is something that I would look for. It's not if it's somebody that I couldn't have a meal with or hang out with, I don't want to invest. And it doesn't necessarily come down to even like political values or anything. It's just, can we have a debate about something that we don't see eye to eye on, and then walk away just feeling like we accomplished something, or we were both heard. So that's something that I would look for on the human aspect.
That's interesting, because I think that you mentioned that you don't know how someone can ensure that they receive clients in which, align with that mentality. But I think that you kind of just touched on it, is the idea that if you put yourself out there as this type of person, I think a lot of times you will receive the same kind of energy back from who's interested in your services. I think that I constantly, I always question people on their websites, because that's the thing I see them obviously first when I investigate a company. And a lot of times there's cursing, or like there's something very abrupt to language, and I always comment on that, because and not that I have a problem with it. Just, why do you do this approach? Like, what is your reasoning behind it? Like, is there something that you found that we haven't about this type of strategy? And they just say, usually 9 out of 10 times they say to me, this is who I am as a person, and I am creating a website about my services. So I want people who have that same kind of energy. I want people that have don't give a, pardon my French, shit mentality, and or really don't want any bullshit or whatever it may be. And that's energy that they put on their website. And I think that they're not going to get a stick in the mud client, because they're going to be offended by the language on the website and click off.
They're using it as a filter in that regard. And it's interesting. So I've been able to curse since I was 6 years old. It was a failed experiment on my mom's account on a vacation, where she asked me, what do you guys can do anything you want. What do you want to do? I'm like, we want to cuss. So we were driving from where I lived in Tampa to where we had some family up north in the Midwest. And so, we cursed the whole way, and she couldn't get us to stop, right? My father, he's a, Greek guy, notorious, cursor. So it just worked. We just weren't allowed to curse that. That being said, and of course, my wife and I, we still, curse and have fun. But I have a mentor that brought up a great point. I used to do these events, and we'd get a bunch of agency owners together, and I plan on still doing some more in the future. And some people would complain about the cursing. And I was very much like you were saying, and maybe the company you were talking about, where I would say don't be so uptight, or don't be a stick in the mud. And he came to me with some facts. He said, subconsciously, some people can't tell, depending on how they were brought up, that if somebody is cursing, whether it's a negative situation or not, whether it's now heated, they can't determine, because that wasn't a part of their world, right? So they don't, two people just throwing like F-bombs, and just like, man, what the fuck, or whatever, just joking around, right? They don't know, because they weren't around that. So it's very difficult for them to distinguish. So now something that we were trying to make more comfortable, we made uncomfortable, and we were trying to include, and we've excluded, right? So it was just a really interesting takeaway for me. So I just try to look at it from all perspectives and just read the room where I'm at.
I really do like that. Sometimes I slip up. I try my best sometimes to not incorporate it into my language, especially with a new person, because I have no idea. Usually I wait for them to do it first. I did not this time.
Thing, right? You're absolutely right. And sometimes in like client relations, they'll say it, or sometimes you say it first, and then you can read back. And sometimes they feel really comfortable. I used to smoke, right? So I wouldn't smoke around somebody if I knew they didn't smoke. But as soon as some clients found out I smoked, we were best friends. They wanted to just set up meetings just so they could smoke all my cigarettes. Right? And it's just these ways that we connect.
What a beautiful relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're finding lung cancer together.
I think that's wonderful. I do think that it's definitely something to say about having this kind of common ground with clients that's a camaraderie rather than just a business relationship. I think that obviously there's a line, and I think everyone would agree with that, but it's nice to have that kind of, you know, whether it's a language similarity or a pastime similarity, quote unquote. I think that it really does strengthen relationships surprisingly, and I think that a lot of that, I think that might be an interesting topic to delve into a little more, because I think that a lot of agencies don't focus on those kind of relationships because they either feel like they're too far removed from their clients, where it's impossible to do that. Maybe they're fully remote or whatever it may be, that they don't get to focus on those relationships. But I still think that there's ways of doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it ultimately comes down to like, what is your foundation? Your foundation is your values. Don't go against anything in your values. Just be really open and flexible and just try to understand, you know, who it is that you're working with and types of people around you, whether it's your employees or your clients, and everything is going to tend to work out. Right. It's if you start going against your values and things you don't believe in and doing things that you may not see as a part of your character, then it's not going to go well. If you don't drink, don't drink. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, those
don't force yourself to be like a client.
I think it's just being open and just communicating from a place of honesty. And I think you'll find a way to connect. It's when people are hiding those things and they're not saying essentially like how they feel. People are going to be able to read that, and it's just going to create a chasm between you and whoever you're trying to connect with.
Yeah, speaking of smoking, there is a lot of people that I've met that started smoking because they were in the business world. And,
all right.
And I think that's very interesting. I would love to see a study on that, actually, because of how I think that there is some camaraderie in smoking. I completely understand it. I have 6 sisters and 4 parents, and all of them smoke, which is
no brothers?
No brothers. And as of now, I think a couple of them have quit since the start, but at one point everyone smoked, and I think that there is some weird like connection that everyone has because of it. And I can understand in the business world, a lot of people, you know, do things to connect with their clients, and maybe developing an addiction is a little too far sometimes.
And that's a good point.
It's interesting.
It comes down to the culture. There's company cultures where they pound booze. They drink a lot. There's other company cultures where they smoke cigarettes, and it also familial, right? There's families that do that as well. There's families that are shopaholics. There's families that are penny pinchers. So I think that's just a part of the culture. And if you want to work with that type of company, you have to choose like, all right, like, is this okay with me? And I think that those are some very important intentional decisions that maybe people weren't making previously, but that they're making now.
Yeah. So, well, speaking of client relationships like that, what approaches do you kind of ensure where clients are satisfied and you are creating a long-term partnership? Is it this camaraderie, or is it a lot of other things? I'm sure it's not just the smoking.
It's not. No, I mean, you're not. If you're doing a terrible job, but you're just fun to hang out with, you're not going to keep a client very long, because there's no way that they're going to be able to hold their position or their or make their kind of company money. No, it's essentially just creating really clear expectations, right? And that could be in a scope or a brief or whatnot. This is how we're going to measure the performance of whatever it is that we're doing. If we're developing a website or creating a marketing campaign or so on and so forth. And just being really, really crystal clear on that. And then also under promising and over delivering. So you have that on one side, having a fantastic team to deliver. I'm not doing the work. We hire really great people. We treat them as well as we possibly can, and they do fantastic work. And ultimately, all the other stuff, whether it's, whether you get to become buddies or hang out or connect with them in a certain way, that's all just icing on the cake, right? And I think that's just a part of like who I am and who a lot of our team are. And in doing that, it's not necessarily strategic of like, hey, this is how we're going to keep an account. It's just, that's the beautiful consequence of it. We get to be ourselves. We get to do this thing, and it just also makes it better. So there's a lot of alignment there.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think that that you have a good relationship when you can actually see it, which that sounds very arbitrary. But like I think that a lot of people maybe what's the word I'm looking for, nervous, for lack of better phrasing, that they don't know whether they're pleasing a client or not. Like they're doing everything on paper that's correct, but they can't really see, they're not interacting with them enough to know that they're continuously happy. And I think that continuous communication is really important in that process.
It is. And we have a lot of hand holding and FaceTime with our clients. And if you go in some of the, ad and marketing agency realm, there are some people say like, oh, we only meet with our clients once a month or once a quarter or so on and so forth. I would rather spend the extra money, and it's very expensive to have a body with another body, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or that they're going to, meet and present with these teams, for that confidence. That's essentially insurance, knowing that everything's going to be okay. Because if you're not speaking to your client for a quarter and there's something that crops up, whether it's something personal or something business that is now going to be in conflict, whatever it is that you do for them, then you want to have some interaction with them where you could potentially solve that. So I think there's this trend to over optimize and make things overly efficient, which removes that human touch that I think is just going to end up biting people in the ass, and they'll ultimately go full circle and go back to what is that I'm saying.
No, I definitely agree with that. I think that there is this, I think that a lot of people don't realize is when someone is hiring you for a service or hiring your company for a service, they may not have any familiarity with how like the systems in which involve doing that. So sometimes there might be a problem that they're realizing but don't know how to discuss it. Or a lot of times I see that there's a lot of clients that just don't want to bring things up because they're, there are people that are non-confrontational, even if they're paying someone to do something.
Yeah.
And you can have on paper a successful campaign by the end of it, but if a client wasn't happy throughout the process, then you're not going to keep them. You're not going to have them for life. You're not going to get referrals from them. You're not going to get other people to make happy. You're just going to end that relationship there. It's kind of like a one-night stand mentality. My boss used that the other day, so I'm allowed to use that.
There's a lot about your culture. I mean, it sounds like and you're right. And also, something I should add, it also depends on your business model, right? Like if you have a business model and you're a SaaS product, or you're something where you're so far removed from the end user and it doesn't make financial sense, you have to put some things in place. And some people would call these marketing. Some people would call these just customer service. Just take advantage of surveys. Take advantage of things that there's a feedback loop of communication where you really understand what's important to them and where they're at in the life cycle of being your client and customer.
How do you utilize data and like analytics to optimize revenue as the chief revenue officer? Is there specific things that you look at that you think are more important than others?
I think lifetime value is one of the most important, right? Because that's essentially evidence that you're taking care of a client in a specific way. And if you're making a profit on it, the profit that you deem is necessary for the health of your company, that is a huge indicator. So I'd say that's probably one of the most important. And then I think as far as the others, it's just new accounts sold and then upsells on clients. And upsells aren't necessarily, some people might, kind of wince at that, but it's essentially if a company is growing, they're going to need things that weren't initially in our scope. We want that. They want that. That means they have new markets that they're going into. They have new offerings, new things that we want to communicate to their clients and customers. So those are the two biggest drivers that I'd say are most important to me, but it doesn't necessarily mean that those are the du jour of what's actually happening in the moment.
Is there anything that you think is crucial that maybe other agencies aren't looking at, or that you see as a pattern?
Yeah, I don't think enough agencies are looking at the long-term impact of AI. I see, and I debate this with a lot of agencies. So, for instance, there was one huge phase where all jobs were going overseas, right? I'm kind of proud of us. 99% of our team is US based, which is a very expensive thing to do. Um,
Yeah, that's
but
amazing.
Thanks. And then because the way our value standpoint for the most part is, all right, these are like our brothers and sisters. It's not to start some kind of political debate or anything, but it's like, okay, how can we hold these jobs here as long as possible? Anyway, that being said, tons of these agencies start shipping all these jobs overseas. Fine, that's great. It was for profitability. But to not think that their clients are going to leverage that information and say, like, dude, I know that you are paying an eighth of what this other person is doing, so it needs to lower those costs.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing is going to happen with AI. If you can do something now in 5 minutes that used to take you 2 hours, you're not going to be able to charge your client $500 to do that. So they're going to need to be very sharp and understand the value of what it is that they provide and move those other things to the side that their client can now do and help them empower. And if they don't do that, they're going to find themselves in a really bad situation.
I definitely agree. I think that with AI specifically as well, I think that at this point in time, it may not be as advanced as some people think or expect it to be. And I think that causes an issue because I think everyone is aware of that. At this point, AI is like a bit of a joke. It does amazing things, but a lot of people will throw it around and you use it in a joking manner. And I think that when I see it on a website, like someone says AI powered this, AI generated that, or whatever, it doesn't leave a good taste in my mouth when I'm reading that as of now, because all I see is, and I don't think that it's bad to utilize it. Like a lot of people, it's an assistive tool at this point in time. Like you can't rely on it, but it does help do a lot of the menial tasks. But I think that a lot of people putting it on their website, advertising that it's a part of their process, I don't think it's helping them at this point. Maybe it'll look really nice in like 5 years because we know the capabilities of it, but the advance, like where it is now, I think when people read it on a website, they're thinking, oh, I'm going to get computer generated work that's not unique, that's not personalized, I'm paying too much for something that I could do myself using the same tool, blah, 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 blah.
Absolutely. And that's potentially what it means to a segment today. And it could mean far worse tomorrow, or it could mean far better, right? You're absolutely right. And then ultimately, I mean, you can take something kind of out of the headlines. You could hear with like United Health, right? And they were using AI. And then, all right, these are things that put a very bad taste in the mouth of a population, right? So, but you also have this flip side of this executive level that doesn't even know what they're talking about. We're like, you know what? We need some AI in here, right? Literally, there's like CTO scrambling, like, dude, it doesn't even make sense to do this with AI or this data or whatever. And people are just, but that always happens, right? It's just these people trying to compete, stay on top of this competitive edge. But ultimately, companies are going to learn how to use it in the way that you said, where it's just this assistive tool. And agencies are doing this as well. And I think there's going to be, a balance of that. And I think there's some agencies that really do know value outside of what AI can really do. And they're either going to need to figure out what it is they can do better, or they're going to simply be out of business. And that's okay. This is just evolution. This is what happens.
Yeah, exactly. I think that it's almost a little naive not to utilize it in some manner because it is so helpful, but at the same time, it should not be like this centripetal, the end all be all of things that you're implementing into your business model. It is not. It is not there, and it is also. I think that even if we get to the point where it is there, I think that people will. I don't know. I think that we'll get to this point where we'll have another little evolution of people will be missing personability. And if we have all of these chatbots, and I think people will want to get away from that at some point. And the agencies that have always been doing personal approaches from day one and did not implement it in this way will come out on top.
For sure. I think agencies that really that tap into the zeitgeist and they're really good at culture, I think they're going to be really, really strong, or well positioned rather, based on like that storytelling. But yeah, make no illusions that like, yeah, AI is going to come in. People are going to be overly reliant. Like just think about like just like sneakers and shoes, right? If you go back a few thousand years, people were, essentially running barefoot for the most part. And some would argue that, okay, well, if you had this like soft cushion on your foot, your feet wouldn't be tough, and so on and so forth. But then the scaling of everything else, where you have carpets in houses and there's no sand and all these other things that happen, that you don't need that. And that's essentially what's going to happen in AI. We're going to live in this other, paradigm where we're going to be doing all of these other things that we can't even imagine with these tools, and everything's going to shift. And that's the scariest thing right now for a lot of people, that they're not adapting it at the level that they necessarily should on one side. And then there's the other side, there's overly reliant. The beautiful thing, going back to just, evolution, like we're all going to figure it out. But it's going to be uncomfortable for, a lot of us until we do.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting balancing act, and it's kind of fun to observe. Maybe that sounds a little like sadistic, but it's interesting. It's interesting to observe because you're seeing the effects. I'm sure it's similar to growing up in the age of no computer and growing up in the age of the computer and technological.
I grew up in the 80s. Yeah, so I have some experience with that.
You look great for growing up in the 80s. I did not.
Back smoking, Shannon. Let's do it.
Yeah, I gotta pick it up. I guess it's the key to youth. But I definitely think that it's very not I don't know about nice, because bad things could happen. But I think it's interesting to be able to see and live during the age of such a insane technological advancement that people didn't think. Maybe it's the equivalent of, I think, flying cars in the future that people thought would happen, and I think about that constantly.
Those bad boys.
Well, Teslas, they're also the kind of the equivalent of a flying car to me. Like, I feel that people didn't think that would be possible at some point, or they dreamed about it in like their pipe dream as a child, because they had no idea what technology could do. But it's so incredible to watch it happen in real time. It's just unfortunate because there's so many repercussions that happen from not being able to implement it correctly or know how to use it or whatever it may be.
I just wish they looked cooler, man. Like, yeah, I don't know. It looks like a dystopian future to me. I'm not buying the minivan of the future. Like they all look
the Cybertrucks.
Yeah, except the Cybertruck. I'm like, that just looks like this polygon graphic, vomit from the late 80s video game. I don't want to drive that either.
I hate it so much. It's such an eyesore.
Yeah.
I don't like them. I put on air for that. All the Tesla truck drivers can come for me. I don't like them. I think they're ugly. They look like garbage cans to me. Did you know that they are so similar looking to garbage cans that raccoons try to break into them constantly, and there are scratch marks? I'm not even. That is a real thing. A real thing. Because they're just big boxes. I mean, they're not similar to looking like a car. They're really very vastly different from a car.
I don't know. That's the thing, I guess, that bothers me. Like, if Elon's so smart, why isn't he designing like cooler looking cars, man?
He did
get ripped off by a guy that designed really gnarly cars with a Fisker. I mean, if you want to check that out, that's a cool story. I'm
gonna write that down.
Yeah, and this designer worked for him. And Elon was like, dude, why aren't we designing cooler cars or whatever? And the guy's like, you know what? I quit, and then opened shop within a short amount of time. And he had all these really gnarly designs. Yeah, he was working on his own design. Those Fisker ones.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I think it would be very funny. I think that I always think if it was in a different context, that maybe it wouldn't be considered ugly. I think of fashion. There are a bunch of very ugly designer things that I see every once in a while. I'm not watching runways normally, but if I come across something, wow, that is so disturbing. If I saw someone wear that on the street, I would think very strangely of them. And also, if they were in Philly, they might get beat up just for looking like that. I don't know. I think that if that car was in the designer world and not just Tesla or whatever it may be. Like Balenciaga made this car. I think that people wouldn't say as much as they did about it just because it's associated with Tesla. And I think about that a lot. Like context is really important for those types of things. Just like for marketing, we'll segue back to that.
We found our way back.
Context is really important. That leads me to my favorite question to ask people.
Okay.
Do you have an example of a marketing campaign that you think is the worst one that you've ever seen? Like maybe the repercussions of it, maybe the idea wasn't bad, but it didn't turn out the way it was supposed to, or maybe the idea was bad and it turned out exactly how you expected.
The one that's most current that I can think of would probably be Jaguar's new release. That was terrible. That. Yeah, where it looked like they were selling a rock bench. And I think it was just, if they would have maybe released that maybe a couple years prior, I think that's kind of where the zeitgeist was at the time. It probably would have been a little bit better received and people been a little bit softer on it. Yeah, but I thought that was just horribly executed and done. I try not to remember too many of the bad ones. I mean, there's tons of bad ads on. Yeah, I'd say that's the one I can remember most clearly. And now my brain's just like
going through all of them. Yeah. I do think that they're funny. They're some of my favorite things to think about. I don't think really negatively of them.
Cigarette? There was a smokeless cigarette, yeah.
Oh,
so
yeah.
This is great. We're turning this into like a tobacco podcast, but there was a smokeless cigarette, and I think they spent billions of dollars on it at the time, and they couldn't figure out why nobody was smoking the smokeless cigarette, right? Because you could technically smoke it on a plane, or you could smoke it in rooms for the most part. I mean, granted, something's still burning. Mm-hmm. But so the story goes, they're in this executive meeting, and they're all, complaining, and they're all, smoking their Marlboros, and they're blowing, smoke in the air off their cowboy killers, and they talk about the $1 billion they spent. And one guy stands up, he's like, "How many of you guys actually smoke the smokeless cigarette?" And they all like, "Well, yeah, and none of them did. And it turns out that none of them did. So why, if they don't believe in their own product, why would you even then sell it? So that's kind of one of the takeaways there. And then the other, more on the nose with smoking is people enjoy blowing out smoke if they're.
That's the fun part.
That is.
That's right. The best part of smoking cigarettes.
or vapes or any of those other things that people are doing now. So yeah, just one of those product failures that's always stuck with me.
That's hysterical. I wondered where it went, because I do remember that the release of a smokeless cigarette, but I think my dad smoked them for a period of time, but he tries it he loves trying new tobacco fads. There's been many, but yeah, I think one, I don't know if you've heard of this one. This is my favorite, I think, that I've heard throughout the podcast was I forget which airline it was, but they implemented this strategy. It was way back. It was probably during the 80s. So maybe you know about that they were they wanted for people to travel for business more often. They wanted to tap into that interest group. So they decided to send letters to the people that were bringing their wives on business trips to thank them for coming and joining their as a second trip, because they're thankful that they're bringing people, because then it's more money accumulated to them, whatever that may be. There were many people that were cheating on their wives that were outed for cheating on their wives by this airline.
Oh, man.
Because of this. They were trying to do a kind gesture and didn't think of the repercussions that could come of that marketing campaign. And ultimately, I'm sure they probably lost a lot of revenue from
and I think they were being super naive, and they just weren't understanding their client base enough. They were living in this Pollyanna perspective and looking at it through that lens of just wow. It sounds like it was one of those. It looked really good on paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that about marketing. I think a lot of things look really good on paper.
You know?
No, it's amazing. I'm like, you really don't know your interest group. There are many businessmen cheating on their wives. You should realize this.
Wow. That's not good.
But that is actually all the time we have today. I feel like I shouldn't.
It's a great finish.
And there are many businessmen
Start
cheating on their
start
wives.
smoking. All right,
So,
lessons are here.
This is brought to you by Big Cheat and Big Tobacco.
Ashley Madison and Marlboro.
This is how you're successful in business. Well, thank you for such an enjoyable podcast. I think I really did learn a lot from this, and it was fun.
Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for watching and or listening. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to have more fun on the podcast. Like I get to, you don't get to come on, but you get to watch. And that's just as enjoyable, I'm sure. Thank you so much again for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Cool. Bye now.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest. And to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.